Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, Shillong. How are you guys doing? Can you make some noise? Yes? Thank you, thank you. This will be a lot more fun if it's interactive. If I get feedback from you guys, it's lovely to be here. I think Shillong is a lovely place. Do you guys agree with me? Yeah, Shillong's a very nice place. Yeah, I came here. It's very fascinating. The entire place just looks like one giant Maruti 800 commercial. It's just. I think along with a house, you get a Maruti 800 free. It's just really weird. And people like if you get very like avant-garde, then you buy an Alto or something. And even then, like, no man, it's like too hipster. Please go back to Assam. It's terrible. But my name is Azeem Banatwalla. You're probably wondering who is this guy. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Azeem Banatwalla. This is a bit of an inconvenient name to have in this country because whenever I meet new people, they play this game with me called Religious 20 Questions, where they try to guess what religion, what caste, what subcaste I belong to. Really fun game. So I go up and say, hi, I'm Azeem Banatwalla. They'll say, Banatwalla. They turn into Anil Kapoor for some reason. They say, Banatwalla, you must be Parsi. And I say, no, I'm not Parsi. My parents met in college. They weren't related. They say, oh, you're not Parsi, then you must be Muslim. And they always ask me this question. A lot of you have asked your Muslim friends this question. They'll ask, so Azeem, what kind of Muslim are you? The normal kind? I don't know. It still persists, what kind? And the kind that won't blow you up? If you ask me again, I might change my mind. But still they'll persist. But I am a Muslim, I'm a stand-up comedian. And I asked myself before doing this talk, really, who am I? And I couldn't really get an answer. So I tried to quantify this question in terms of the terms that people really think of these days, social media. So in terms of social media, my name is Azeem Banatwalla. I am a stand-up comedian. I have 9,159 followers on Twitter. I have 3,800 likes on my Facebook page. I have 380 followers on Instagram. And I have 0 followers on Google+. Because nobody uses it. But that's what it is. And people these days come up to me, and I don't find this particularly impressive. I have no airs about myself. People still come up to me these days and say, oh, you're a celebrity, you're famous. And fame, honestly, it doesn't really matter to me. And honestly, it's because I'm so antisocial that I'm scared to death of being famous, just of the amount of people that I would have to talk to if I actually was recognized on the road. But it's terrible. But there's always the question that people ask me, which is, how did you get here? And it's a very simple question. I took a cab from my house to the airport. I took a flight to Guwahati. From Guwahati, I took a cab to Shillong, and then I reached here. My wife put that slide in there. I'm sorry. Okay. But a lot of people ask me, they want to know what is the sort of the career graph of a stand-up comedian. For me, it was just dumb luck, honestly. I graduated as an engineer in 2010, like every third person in this country. And I graduated, and I did engineering, and I realized after 2 years that it wasn't cut out for it, because I taught every single person in my class computer programming, and I failed the exam myself. And it was really weird because the examiner didn't understand what I had done. That was what he told me. And I did not understand this. So eventually, I got into engineering because I wanted to develop video games. And I actually went for a video game development job interview, where I was interviewed by a Turkish gentleman named Ovi, who looks sort of like this. And after the interview, he gave me some very interesting feedback where he essentially said, lol aukat mein reh. Basically, that's what it was. Like, I realized right then that I was never going to amount to anything in this world as an engineer. But I got placed in a company which I can't tell you the name, but it starts with I and ends with gate. But actually, I got placed then. It was during the recession, so they didn't call me for 1 year. So for this 1 year, I was sitting around wondering what I'm going to do with my life. And like every engineer who doesn't get a job, I did the most logical thing. I made a profile for myself on Naukri.com. And Naukri.com is the kind of place where you take, like, everyone has dreams and hopes and aspirations in their life. And Naukri.com is that one place where you can take your dreams and hopes and aspirations and watch them disappear before your very eyes. It's terrible, right? I actually put up my profile there, and I said, Azeem Banatwalla, engineer, first class. The first job offer I got, I kid you not, was for waiter at upcoming Chinese restaurant. And it said the job requirements are, must have good manners and exceptional memory. And I looked at that and I was like, crap, I don't have either of those. And it was a very genuinely low ebb in my life when I realized that I was underqualified to be a waiter. It's just really terrible. But eventually, I took up an internship in the spare time at UTV. Through that, I got a job at a travel magazine, which I did not know at the time which magazine it was that I was interviewing for. Eventually, it turned out to be National Geographic Traveler India, which is one of, I think, probably the best place I will ever work in my life. A lovely team of people who've really taught me a lot, and really, I've become the writer and the person I am today, thanks to a lot of the stuff that I've learned from them. Incidentally, while I was at National Geographic, the aforementioned IT company, which I can't name, but I've subtly named already, they sent me an email calling me and they sent me an offer. And I replied to them, basically saying no. This is the reply that I sent them. I essentially said that I will only join them if they make a specific office for me right next to my house, if they allow me to eat and drink at my table and make fun of people in the office, and if they pay me a 7-figure salary, which is 3 times the amount they were planning to pay me. And I also said, thank you so much for not hiring me. You've made my life a lot happier. And then they called me and yelled at me. And basically, I've been blacklisted from being hired by an IT company ever again, which is why I'm doing comedy with my life right now. But in terms of comedy, the career progression for me was such that in 2011, I think it was August 2011, I did my first open mic. An open mic night, for those of you who don't know, is basically you have an open stage where you have 20 comedians. And this is how every comedian starts out, where every comedian is given 3 minutes to sort of try out their material. And if you're good enough, you're called back to do another spot, so 5, 10 minutes. And sort of 8 months after that was the first time that I actually got a paid spot. I think it was June 2012 that I actually got my first paid spot at the Comedy Store in Bombay. And after that, in 2013, I joined the comedy collective called East India Comedy. And I've been doing comedy for about 4 years now. In terms of statistics, if I was to quantify it, I've done 400 shows approximately, spent 9,000 minutes on stage, which equates to 150 hours on stage, which is 6.25 days on stage. So cumulatively, in the last 4 years, I have spent less than a 1 week actually making money. So how does that make you feel about your life? No, but it's terrible. It's terrible. Being a comedian is not all that it's cracked up to be. There's a lot of things that you really have to deal with. But I want to talk about really the creative process of doing comedy, which is really what I wanted to talk about. And it's really when you look at it, there are 3 major paths that a comedian or any person like looking for a career in comedy in this country takes right now. The first part is sorry, I keep doing this backwards. Bollywood and television. The first part is Bollywood. Like a lot of people, a very good example is Veer Das, who started out doing comedy, then eventually gets into Bollywood. The plus point of doing this is that you get a lot of fame, you get a lot of money, but it also means that you have very little creative satisfaction, in that you have to create a lot of content that is very mass-oriented, and you're never really in control of what you're doing. So I'm not a huge fan of this, although I've written the Screen Awards that you see. I've written for IFA, I've written for Shah Rukh Khan, all that. It's a lot of great fun. You get to take selfies with everyone, but that's about it. Like, there's nothing more than that. Then you have YouTube, which is very big these days. You have guys like AIB, The Viral Fever, Karan Gill, Pretentious Movie Reviews, which is a fantastic platform to get your material out to like millions of people all over the country and all over the world, which I think is a fantastic opportunity that is being made available. And I think the YouTube revolution is really taken comedy to the next level in this country. And the third, which is the path which I have sort of taken, which is the path which is not a lot of people tend to take in comedy, which is the path on stage. Usually everyone in comedy starts out doing stage shows, but eventually you move on to YouTube or Bollywood because eventually that's what's going to make you the money. See, in terms of stage, I find that it is the least stable path that you can take financially, but it is also the most fulfilling path that you can take from a creative standpoint, because you are in complete control of what you are writing. Everything you write is just, I write for myself. Like, I'm not writing for anyone else, which is a very good thing because you're completely in control of what you're writing, but it's also a very bad thing because if you're like me, you're just going to sit around playing video games all day. It's very bad that way. But what I want to really talk about is how the comedic process works, how a joke actually happens. A lot of people have this misconception or misnomer that a comedian thinks up jokes while he's on the stage, or that a comedian writes a new script for every show. That's honestly not how it works. There's a very interesting process behind how a thought turns into a joke. And it usually starts with just a random idea, which can be just anything, because you have the liberty of the world, you start looking at the world differently as a comedian. You start to see it not as a world, but just a repository of material where you can just pick things and make fun of them. That's really, when we're at parties, comedians, we're usually not the people partying and all. We're the guys sitting in the corner and looking at the people saying, look, he looks so stupid, I'm going to write about him. That's basically what happens when we're doing comedy. But we have a lot of illusions about how comedy works. And a lot of people think that the joke just comes, at the spur of the moment, and then, oh, you have a joke. Like it's like, 5 people sitting around drinking and making jokes. It's really not like that. You'll be very interested to know that a joke, like if you look at a 3-minute comedy bit, it actually takes close to a month or 2 months to actually refine that bit and make it something that can actually go on stage. Because we have this sort of rule of thumb that if you think of something and it's immediately hilarious in your head, nobody else is going to find it funny. It always happens that way. You think, wow, this is the best joke ever, and then you do it on stage and nobody laughs. It's always like that. And testing a joke is a very different process as well, because the testing the joke, I'll tell you basically how it works. So you think of a joke, you write a joke, you try it out in front of an audience, nobody laughs, you come home and cry under a blanket, you continue to cry for 3 days, and you repeat that entire process until people finally laugh at your joke. And it's a very hard process in terms of, like, after a point, I think any creative or performance-based thing where you're doing your own thing, you start to get very insecure about what you're doing. And like every 2 weeks, I start asking myself 1,000 questions. I start asking myself, am I still funny? What am I doing with my life? Will I ever write a better joke than this? Why am I doing this? And it's really hard to constantly be asking yourself these same questions, just constantly, barrage of stuff hitting your head. And this is actually probably one of the reasons why you'll see that a lot of comedians have a few problems with alcohol and drugs, because that's the way you find to cope with this kind of stuff. But it's a very interesting process about how the jokes work. What I'll do is I'll illustrate one of the bits that I've done. It basically started with me writing 3 jokes about Gujaratis, which, by the way, is the first 3 jokes that every comedian in this country writes, because the Gujaratis are the most amazing, they're the funniest and the most loving people, just because they can completely take a joke on themselves. And it started with those 3 jokes, and eventually it turned into this entire bit, which became about interplanetary travel and Amitabh Bachchan's career, and then finally came back to being those 3 jokes. And it's a bit you've probably seen on YouTube. I'll show it to you here as well.
There was this whole furor last year about this Earth-like planet called Kepler 22b. You guys heard about this? Kepler 22b, which, when you think about it, sounds like a really skinny guy with man boobs, like Kepler 22b. My name's Kepler 22b. This is my hot sister, Kepler 36d. And Kepler 22b is 600 light years away, which is 600 million kilometers away, and that is really far away. But this one guy came up to me and said, you know what? Indians will be the first people on Kepler 22b. And I just thought he was retarded. But then I found out he was Gujarati. And of course it made sense, because Gujaratis are the most avid travelers in the world. You can name the most obscure place in the middle of Iceland. You'll still find one Gujarati family who's been on a 3-night 4-day package from Jignesh Travels in Parlines. For all we know, there are already Gujaratis on Kepler 22b. Like, you look through a telescope, you'll see them waving back at you, eating theplas from a steel container, holding up a sign saying, "Vipul bhai, Avija!" And we have the Gujarat tourism ads these days. They're awesome. They've got Amitabh Bachchan as the brand ambassador. So poetic. Because essentially it's a man from UP telling you to go and mess up another state. And what does Amitabh Bachchan even know about Gujarat? He's from UP, he lives in Juhu. Closest he's ever been to Gujarat is Mithibai College. And he comes on the screen, he says, "Come, breathe in a bit of Gujarat." Like how? Like, what is the procedure? Snort at Dhokla, go like, "Saras!" All the Gujarati people in the house make some noise. You know what? I love you guys. I love you guys. Because the whole world makes fun of you guys. And you guys don't do shit about it. It's really... You can't do that with other sections of society. You can't do that. If you make fun of a Maharashtrian, he'll send you back to UP. Make fun of a North Indian, he'll vote you out of roadies. Make fun of a Muslim like me, I'll fly a plane into your house. But you make fun of a Gujarati, he'll just laugh and say, "Arey, hame to ewa achhe." Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that's all from me.
And then turns into that nonsense which you just saw there. Yeah, so can we just, so the last bit that I want to talk about, I'm running a bit short on time. So the one thing that I really want to talk about, which is very relevant in this time that we are, is censorship. We've had the entire furor happening about the AIB roast. Obviously, all of you guys know about that. And we've had stuff like the Charlie Hebdo incident, where there's so many people who were shot dead just over a joke. And I think there's a large debate that's been had right now about freedom of speech. But I think it's the wrong debate that we're having. Because freedom of speech is one aspect, and there's also the aspect of context. But we're still evolving to comedy in this country, and we still haven't realized that a joke is just meant to be a joke. You can take this from me that no comedian, wakes up in the morning and just says, "Oh, I don't like Muslims, let's make jokes about them." Like, it never happens, right? And sometimes as comedians, we aren't just making jokes. We are, and the more important part is that we are offering an opinion. And sometimes in order to make that opinion, you have to push your boundaries a little bit and make a joke that sort of looks or talks about something that is a little sacred, that is sort of taboo. And I feel that it's necessary sometimes to do that, because at the end of the day, I'm a comedian. I feel if I'm not getting my point across, I'm not doing my job right. And if, how do I put this? Like, it makes no sense for the entire setup with me with a microphone in my hand, you as an audience. If I'm not giving you the best possible opinion I can, I'm shortchanging you as an audience. So I feel that it's very important to keep that freedom of speech and keep it there. And a lot of people, there's a big thing of saying people are offended. I'm offended by this. Where people look at a YouTube video and say, I am offended by this. And I'm like, dude, it is a 2-minute YouTube clip, which accounts for 1/1000th of the internet. And if you have the time to be offended by that, maybe it's not the video, but it's just you that's the problem. I think that's my personal opinion on the matter. But comedy, it's not all doom and gloom. Comedy is picking up fantastically well right now. We have, I think, 60 professional comedians in this country. There were 35 last year. It's gone to 60 right now, which is still nothing, because in the US, there are 2,000 professional comedians in just LA alone, in just one city. So we still have a long way to go. But we have great comedians coming down. We had Bill Burr, who came to Bombay last week. We have Jerry Seinfeld coming down next month, which I think is a huge deal for India. And comedy, the journey of comedy in this country is just starting right now, and I'm privileged to be a part of it. And I hope that you guys continue along with the journey, along with us. And I hope to see you guys as part of this comedic journey. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.